Welcome everyone. Good morning or good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. And while we just wait for everyone to trickle in here this morning, we thought it might be interesting to ask where everyone's tuning in from. We have representation from different areas of Canada today, just on our panel team. Yep. So type into the question panel there. Where are you tuning in from? We'd love to hear. Montreal.
Wow.
Cool.
The Netherlands.
Yeah. And Norway, Indiana. Okay, lots of representation from different areas.
Yeah, fantastic.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, while everyone else is typing that in, why don't we go ahead and introduce ourselves? So why don't we kick things off with Rob?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rob Hewitt, and I am the Director of Global Business Development with Spatial DNA. My history is in commercial real estate and commercial project management in construction. And I've been working with Spatial DNA since April 2020. And my specialty is developing and holding very strong relationships with people.
Todd Lewis, I'm the founder CEO for Spatial DNA. Yeah, we started Spatial DNA about 10 years ago now, and yeah, I guess you'll get to know us as we go. Don, over to you.
Yeah, my name's Don Murray, and I'm the founder of Safe Software, and I've been doing this for a long time, and really excited, to meet up with Todd. And I've never met Rob in person, of course, since Rob started after the whole lockdown thing, but one of the things I always enjoyed about the world tour was going to Ottawa or Toronto, depending on, and connecting up with Todd and, and hearing about the exciting things that Spatial DNA was doing. They've always been a company, a partner who's been pushing us in this topic we're talking about today, application integration. And Todd's one of the folks that we reach out to as we're expanding our capabilities to find out, based on his experience and his team's experience, what are some of the areas that we should, invest in to take the technology to, to the next level. Like anything with stuff they've done or any tool, it's never finished. And so we're excited about the release coming up, but also, now we're already started working on the next release. And yeah, so with that, thanks everybody for coming to the webinar, and looking forward to answering some questions. Yeah.
Thanks, Don. So I will go ahead and introduce a couple different ways that you can ask questions this morning. So the first way is in person over the air. So you'll see on your GoToWebinar control panel a little hand icon. So if you click that, we will promote you to a panelist once we have a moment, and I'll communicate with you on the back end. And at that point, you can unmute and share your webcam and ask questions on air. Or the second option, if you're more comfortable, is through text. So you can type in your question into that question panel you'll see on the GoToWebinar control panel, as in the screenshot here, and hit send, and we'll answer your question live.
Nice.
So with that being said, I think we actually already have a couple questions, and I think I see one that is a great one to start with. So the question asks, what actually is application integration?
Okay, so that one seems to be a bit of a softball one there, Don. So application integration, from our perspective, is basically about connecting two or more systems together and allowing them to communicate, typically through an API, but there's other ways. It tends to be transactional messages, right? So as you make a change in one system, you're reflecting that change, maybe doing some data transformation in the middle to move that message or that transactional change to the other system. Don, anything to add there?
No, I mean, that's great, and I always have something to add. So I would say, yeah. So what Todd said was perfect. I would add that sometimes, data is scattered across multiple systems, and so application integration also enables you to answer new questions and uncover new insights when you start combining data from other systems. So I think, Todd really hit on, it improves the efficiency of your organization because now you have these systems directly communicating. And then the other part is you can get new insights to drive your decisions when you start pulling these systems together. So that would be yeah. So.
And we kind of like to say, it's getting the data at your fingertips in the application of choice. So you don't have to go to 2 or 3 different applications to try to figure things out. If you're doing that, you're the integrator, not the system.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, and so our next question here is application integration the same as enterprise integration?
Yeah, so I'd say that enterprise integration is a bit of an umbrella term. If you think of it as a Venn diagram, application integration is a piece of it. Enterprise integration often also includes API management, so the ability to define and manage APIs, the metering and stuff like that. So that often falls in enterprise integration as well. We do get into some of that with the FME platform, but it's a piece of. Don, thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I agree. And because sometimes organizations are more interested in just pure data integration, which they have data in different databases and they want to bring them together. And application integration, as the name says, often you're using APIs to bring them together. So enterprise integration is just pulling the whole thing together. Some organizations do use them, interchangeably. So and so generally when we're talking with the client, we find out, exactly what they want, and it could be a bit of both. So yeah. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and I think we might have started to build on this question a little bit, but the next question is, what are the benefits of application integration? Why do organizations implement it?
Yeah, so we've actually even got, so benefits of application integration. So there's kind of 4 key ones that we talk about there. One is reducing sort of that mundane work. I've stolen some of your ideas there around that, Don. You used to say, the silicon units are better than the silicon-based units are better for mundane work than sort of us organic units for doing repetitive kinds of work. So it basically reduces your copy, paste, export, import, re-entry of data from one application to the next.
Yeah.
Improves your data integrity, so you can make sure that the data is accurate across multiple systems, and you're reducing human input errors.
Yeah.
Eliminating data silos, and then more flexible infrastructure. So your application, your portfolio of applications is changing on a regular basis. You're changing your configurations. So if you have a flexible platform that's enabling that integration, you can make that sort of that data transfer across those systems simpler, easier, more flexible, and sort of get us sort of human element and all the errors that go with that out of the middle of it. Don't have anything to add?
No, I think that's good. People at the end of Todd hit on, at the end of the day, any system, it's to basically save users time, right? So users don't spend time fighting or looking for the data or the information that they need, and also being able to get access, increase access, so they can make better decisions. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what any tool does, save time, right? That's why we build tools. So yeah. And so what are some of the customers that you've helped, Todd? I mean, Spatial DNA, you guys have done, I think, more application integration than anybody that I know with our technology. So just curious.
Yeah, so far the majority of them have been in sort of local government, city, county government. That's really been more of a choice and experience. But more and more we're getting into other sectors, other industries. So we're starting to work more and more in the manufacturing, sort of industrial and manufacturing customers, higher education, especially for like larger universities and whatnot. We've started to see a lot of requirements and supporting them, and then in healthcare too. So a lot of what we've been doing with application integration really involves around 4 major systems. So asset work management systems,
Yeah.
financial and HR systems, customer relationship management, and then for local government, sort of the community development, which is your permitting, land development, licensing, compliance type systems. And each of those tend to be major focal points for an organization with a lot of requirements of other systems or other point solutions that need to share data with those systems. And 3 of those systems are common across industries, right? So we're finding we're getting more and more at sort of outside just local government.
Right.
Excellent. Okay, so our next question here is, what's the most well-known system that integrates FME in addition to for ArcGIS?
What's the most well-known system that integrates FME in addition to ArcGIS?
I guess in local government, what are the systems that you integrate that you guys see you're integrating the most? So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. What we see is work asset management systems tend to be the ones that have a lot of requirements. So so some of those are driven, most of that's driven from the public works or sort of the water authority, the water, wastewater management group within those municipalities. And there it's like connecting with SCADA systems, more and more into sort of the IIoT, sensor-based networks, ERP, and then we're getting into some interesting ones like, parts management systems. There's a number of companies that are sort of managing parts and inventory on behalf of their customers. So there's a requirement to exchange data there. And there's any number of workflows. For us, we really are focusing automating a lot of these standard workflows that we see. Right?
Yeah.
So
electronic plan review is another one we're seeing some.
Sorry, Rob, I missed that.
Electronic plan review.
Oh, yeah, that too. Yep.
Yeah. How about Maximo? Have you guys come across Maximo, IBM Maximo?
Yep. Yeah. So Maximo, Infor, EAM. So these are some of the bigger ones. When you talk to sort of the asset management side or the AEC firms that would implement a lot of the asset management systems, they tend to sort of rate them in sort of tier 1, 2, 3 kind of levels of product. A lot of them would put sort of a Maximo or Infor into that tier 1, and I think it's just because of the scale of industry a lot of them end up supporting. So they end up supporting very large asset management and work management requirements for industrial manufacturing, large cities and whatnot. So you tend to see those in larger organizations with lots of workers in the field.
Yeah. Do you see things like CityWorks? Have you worked with that? Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually a development partner with CityWorks. So we do quite a bit of work with CityWorks in Canada, in the US. There's quite a number of requirements around integration there. We're working with the CityWorks implementation partners often in taking on that integration role, helping them de-risk it, and also de-risking it for the customer point of view, because we're bringing to bear sort of pre-built connections and workflows more so to those customers. Yeah.
So Elizabeth, I think there's a good question about desktop versus server. So can you let's throw that at the panel.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So this customer says, we are using FME very heavily for spatial data integration. Mainly on desktop, we are working on transformation to move FME. Do we have any case studies of improvement compared to desktop versus server?
Okay.
Yeah. So have you done any enterprise integration on desktop only? I've always thought of it as a server thing.
Yeah, we tend to focus on server, and the reason for that is a lot of what we've built is built on the FME server automations,
Yeah.
or using, we tend to use a publish subscribe style pattern often, and the scheduling capabilities. So a lot of APIs, as an example, don't have what you call an event-based notification. If something changes, they're not pushing out a notification or anything to say something's changed. So we often need to go and query that interface to find out, based on like a time window, has anything changed? And sometimes that's every minute, sometimes it's every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So we rely heavily on the scheduling capability for FME server to be able to action some of that.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. So, folks, several years ago, I would say 5, maybe a few more, FME server really was could run jobs and had a scheduler, and that was, by and large, it did have a publish subscribe, but it was pretty low level, and you had to really keep your wits about you. And then we've introduced this thing called automations that makes it really easy through a graphical interface to even connect, a bunch of workspaces together to do tasks. And then you can drive it through different events. So it could be an Azure Event Grid, could be AWS SQS, could be, Google, could be Dropbox, could be all these different things, or it could be through a webhook from another application. And that's message-based, as Todd touched on. And that really is the difference maker for FME server. And that's where we're adding support for Todd and my favorite book that we read every night when we're going to bed. Enterprise Integration Patterns. It's a great book. And that's, if you look at that and you want to know what we're going to do next on FME server, just read that book. Todd probably has it there. I do too, somewhere in my office, but there it is. Yeah, Todd's just getting it. But really, that's, there you go, enterprise integration patterns. And so, but that's all on server. So it really is a server based. And then you can decide where you want to deploy it, on a on-premises machine or in the cloud or wherever. So so that's really where, from a safe perspective, we're putting all our effort for enterprise integration. So that's not to say if you want to work with raster files and convert, try to convert raster, analyze them and generate vectors, you can do that. That's purely a desktop thing, but then you could publish the servers. So but here we're talking about FME server almost exclusively, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, FME server, FME cloud.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, lots of excellent questions flowing in. Keep them coming. We're super happy to be answering all these this morning. So the next question on our list here is, can FME be positioned as a data/file orchestration machine, i.e. used for any/all API connectivity and for systems that do not have API?
Yeah, so that's our primary use case. We're using FME as we call an enterprise service bus. So that's providing that orchestration capabilities. There's a few things that we do to support that. So one is we have what we call a common message model. In the Enterprise Integration Patterns book, they would call that a canonical model. So we've built out standard message models for various types of transactions. So it actually works very similar to the way SAFE does, FME software internally for data formats. You're reading data from one API, you're transforming it into an intermediary system independent data model, and then you're potentially writing that to 1, 2, 3 or more APIs. The other part of that question is something that we run into very often are systems that they might have an API, but the API doesn't allow certain types of functionality. So we see writing various kinds of data. There might be limited support, or being able to search right for new transactions if they don't have good support for time-based queries. It can be difficult to search for new patterns. Then you go down to web services and then database interface tables, and then finally you're down to core databases. So depending on the sort of how old your system is, it may have had any of those levels of sort of interface enabled. So one of the things that we are finding that we're doing more and more is that we're actually developing API specifications, and then we're using FME to connect those backend legacy databases and provisioning it as an API, right? So people can actually make API style calls through FME, and it's provisioned in that fashion. Any thoughts? They're done.
No, I mean that's good. We have customers for sure who are, you know, they even have different locations, and they want you know, they want to keep these two things in sync. So we have some organizations that'll do this, you know, cross sync nightly, or we'll have some that have triggers that will do it live. So we tend to see that when a company buys another company and they're using different systems, but yet they want to keep them you know, in sync. And so and often spatial data is part of it, because you know, it's only becoming more important. You know, where are your customers? Where are your facilities? Where are, you know, local government? That's clear why we're strong there. You know, they have everything they work with really has a location. You know, so yeah. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so this next question is about spreadsheets.
Okay.
Does FME support application integration at this time with online spreadsheet platforms such as Smartsheet, Sheets, etc.? If so, what would be the best resource to get started with building these APIs?
I'll let you take that, Pete.
Yeah, that's you know, yes, we do. Google Sheets, right in desktop, there's a format, we've already built it. And so you would just decide, you just pick Google Sheets, and away you go, either for reading and writing. And for just general APIs, there's a number of approaches. You can use the HTTP caller and build them yourself, and or you know, send a note to us, and we're always expanding the reach of our FME. And Todd, you've also built integrations with, you know, using APIs that are not out of the box with FME as well.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways that we do that. A lot of them, it's taking the same patterns that you guys use to build those. We'll build API connections, and we'll store those basically as custom transformers or custom reader writers, so that they can be reused. The other thing that we also do from time to time is leveraging the FME SDK, is just building out essentially in Python that same capability, so that it becomes essentially a native reader writer in safe native connection.
Yeah. And we have this thing called, if you Google FME Hub, so Elizabeth can chat out the URL for that one there. You're going to find hundreds and hundreds of these connectors that SAFE has built and third parties have built. And so it's a great place to go and look for, you know, connectors or samples even. There's this thing called templates that are really samples, and often people will publish it, so that, you know, there's nothing like starting from a blank sheet. And it's, as any developer anywhere knows, the first thing you always do is you look for some samples that show you, and then you build your work from that. And FME is, you know, no different. And of course, you know, one of the things we talk about FME, its strength is no code. And so we work to make sure you can do everything visually. Now, of course, we're pragmatists at heart. And so we've, you know, made it easy for organizations to embrace Python. So there's something called a Python caller, or there's also an API that you can use to create stuff with Python or Java, or there was this really old technology once called TCL. But anyway, and R. And so, because there's so many great open source things out there, that it would be crazy if we didn't embrace all these, make it easy for users who can write code to embrace all these Python libraries, and, you know, and other things. And so our goal, of course, is to make it easier and easier for no code, and by and large, most of our customers are no code, but still having these doorways into all these different, you know, environments across the enterprise. And sometimes, you know, you go to an enterprise and they have some homebrew thing and you need to connect to. And yeah, what's your experience with that, Todd? You see that often, or?
Yeah, actually, some of the questions we're being asked for are from the IT operations groups. So they
Yeah.
want to do things like, hey, we want to provision our users. We want to, back up our databases with these scripts. And sometimes it's a really simple thing, right? It's just taking the scripts that they have and encapsulating them in FME and just
Yeah.
using the FME schedule to run them.
Yeah.
And then if things aren't working, having the error notification. So that's often, we had one customer that had, I think it was a shared file drive that was backing up nightly. And, and the drive failed or something like that. It was a big one. And they went to recover it and realized that none of their backups for years had been backing up. Whoops.
That's a common nightmare. I mean, I worked at an organization once and the same thing, right? They had all these tapes and then they need to back up and they, like verifying a backup, especially in the old days, like it could be very difficult to do. So, yeah. So,
yeah.
All right, our next, sorry, go ahead, Todd.
No, I was going to take the answer, but maybe read the question first.
Yeah. Okay, so our next question here, and I think we might have briefly touched on this at the beginning, are you integrating towards FME desktop or even more towards API and FME server/cloud structure?
Yeah, so we use FME desktop as the design environment, right? So that's basically your designer. And we do all of the testing and whatnot in there for, it might be parts of an overall workflow and maybe not necessarily the full workflow. And then we'll publish that into FME server or FME cloud to run operationally and add those FME server automations, right, to connect things together. One of the things that we do see, and I think there might be some hesitancy from customers about moving to FME server or FME cloud, even more so, is just the perception of cost, right, that it's a big jump. One of the nice things with application integration is the message size is so tiny and FME is so fast at processing that you can set up a really small FME cloud instance that's at about the same price as a FME desktop and be running your application integration just on that. And then you're scaling it if you're starting to have too many processes start to interfere. So for application integration, moving up to server, particularly on FME cloud, is not a high cost activity, and it's relatively easy to do, and it gives you all the benefits of having that sort of that FME server capability. Any comments there, Don?
Yeah, but more from a SAFE perspective. Our perspective at SAFE is we're really building a platform, and both desktop and server are part of that entire platform. There's things in desktop that we don't plan to move to server, and vice versa. We're really looking at how can we connect those two things together in tighter and tighter ways to increase to really leverage the strength of both. FME desktop underneath is a high performance, C++ engine that can really grind data at just, faster than any other tool, in my opinion, and we make it faster every single release. And then server is this, core orchestration layer on top of it that enables you to leverage these things and connect them really, really easily. So what we're seeing is before we had server automations, organizations tended to build really, really large workspaces that would take many, many hours to run. With automations, we're seeing these becoming smaller and smaller because automations also have things called, you can actually truly run things in parallel, which you can't do with desktop. So it's really easy to introduce parallelism, get things done even faster. So yeah. So and on the deployment, we have, if you're local government or you're an organization, we're really seeing uptake in subscriptions, which is probably the most cost-effective way to get going, and then you don't have to worry about what you deploy. Throughout the year, as your needs grow, you can just add more and more. So yeah. So, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, the next one's kind of interesting here. So what are workaround or techniques used to get around very strict IT rules? Do we have any advice on that?
The very strict IT rules. Okay. So most of the restrictions around IT rules in our experience have come from how do you interface with cloud-based systems, right? And what are they going to allow to come in or out? So one of the biggest problems we've run into is if we're deploying FME server, for example, on premise, or even on a a private cloud, and you're connecting to, say, a system like Salesforce. The last thing a lot of people want to do is whitelist the entire IP range of Salesforce into their domain, right? So that can sometimes be a challenge. What we would often do there is look at using that polling strategy where everything that we're doing is going outbound to a particular service to query it and retrieve the results rather than having any data coming in from outside. So that tends to be sort of the biggest sort of IT challenge, if you will, around network security that we come across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and so
I would just say more and more. I mean, really, IT is for any organization, even at SAFE, is something that you have to work with. In today's world of security attacks that are constant, it's they have some very real concerns, and it can make things difficult or take longer than you need. But I would engage them as soon as you possibly can, and really figure out early how little the holes in the firewall or whatever you need have to be, so that they really know, and because you can nail it down to a specific machine even, so that not anybody from the outside can start trying to take advantage of your infrastructure. But it's a tough one for sure. It's more in many cases it's more a carbon or a person problem than it is a technology problem.
Yeah, mostly people just want to understand, and you work with the network architect team or person, depending on the size of the organization.
Yeah.
And SAFE's got some great documentation in the FME server manual around what kind of port access, all of this kind of stuff. The only other area that we come across are authentication protocols. So how do you authenticate? And in the FME environment, and Don, you can probably go into this a little bit better, but when you're linking to various systems, we're recommending essentially the highest level authentication sort of secure mechanism we can, right? So we don't want to just pass simple username passwords. We want to go with like an OpenID or OAuth or something like that to authenticate. And
yeah.
So, Don, if you want to talk to that extent.
Yeah, no, you just brought up a good point, and I would have missed that. So so for FME server, for example, you can use Active Directory as one way for authentication. You can also use Azure Active Directory, which is Microsoft's version in the cloud. In the latest release coming out in March, you can now use SAML, which enables you to integrate with even Google Apps. So if you're an organization using Google Apps like SAFE is, then we're able to integrate and use the authentication credentials of Google Apps through SAML and all the multi-factor authentication or dongles or whatever technology that organizations have now through SAML that is pushed to the corporate infrastructure to make sure that we plug in and we play well, right? Because the last thing somebody from IT, organizations always have churn. And when somebody leaves, you don't want to have to run around to 10 or 15 different systems trying to figure out, did you get all their logins? And so if you go to one spot, that's what people want. Yeah, so.
Excellent. Okay, and so our next question here today, I am looking for some material to make this case to our leadership to support FME server. Do you have any advice you can offer with that? Yeah,
I'll start that one, sure. And then, reach out to us. this Ask Me Anything is really just the start of the conversation and increase your awareness. And so reach out to info@safe.com, and we will put you in touch, or Todd, I think there's going to be a slide later, or you maybe even show it now, Elizabeth, and then you can reach out to them, and then we can point you in the right kind of material that we have, talk a little bit more, and Todd too, to understand what you want to do, and then make a really strong case. So you can see, it's rob.hewitt@spatialdna.com works, info@safe.com works, depending on what you want to do. But then we can make sure, that, yeah. And it's also this question, so getting started is, how do I get started? And you're going to find that that's, at SAFE, we provide free licenses for proof of concepts, pilots, things like that. We really don't, at SAFE, we say we don't want a bad sale. And a bad sale is somebody who buys our product but never uses it. So we want, you to have a good experience, because then you can build something working with Spatial DNA or yourself or others, and then show something that actually adds value. It's a much easier case, and it'll give your, the people you need to convince more certainty in your question. So yeah, but please do reach out. That is the big thing to keep and then we can make sure we give you the information that you really, really need. Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh yeah, the other thing I'll say is SAFE doesn't do services. So that's, and we made that decision many, many years ago, because we wanted to build a good service network worldwide. And so, in Canada, and Todd can talk about his locations, but Todd's been great, and he's made deployments across the country with application integration. Just down the road here, there's a city that he's in, at least one, and there's probably more. Todd doesn't tell me every single thing him and his great team do, but yeah, so.
Yeah, the other thing I'd say, just you mentioned on the services side, we've got an offer as well. We call it integration design agreement, and this is a low cost service where we can essentially look at mapping out your application integration requirements for 2 or 3 systems. And essentially what you would get is essentially like a specification document that you can use to drive your integration with FME. And if you chose not to go that route, it's just as useful for whatever you want to do for application integration. But obviously we would prefer you to work with us on the FME platform.
Awesome. Okay, so our next question here. Where do things currently stand in the integration marketplace with custom code integration versus no-code automation platforms such as FME? And when do you foresee custom code being a thing of the past?
This is religion, isn't it, Don?
Yeah, it is. It is. So yeah. So I'll answer that, and then and then Todd can give his thoughts. So I do believe that the FME automations that we built is the only no-code way where you can implement some of these enterprise integration patterns, and we have plans on how we're going to do that, even for things like enterprise service buses. If you look at other technology, often you're looking at JavaScript or Java or other things that they have libraries, so they try to make it easy for those who know how to code, but at the end of the day, it's still code. And no code has a lot of value. One is that you can have that discussion with the domain expert who's not a coder, and really, pick their brain and get them to collaborate and share, how you're using the data, what the flow is. Everybody understands, graphs and things like that. And whereas if you have code, if you're not a coder, it's like me reading, a foreign language. I only speak one language, so pick any other language than English, and then trying to almost explain what this story is about. I don't have any way of understanding, and so that's the first thing. Do I foresee when custom code will be a thing of the past? I would say not in my lifetime. There's always systems that we're going to bump into that you're going to need folks like Spatial DNA who understand how to extend FME, and the whole community is contributing to FME Hub. So if the idea there is one customer or partner or SAFE does it once, puts it on FME Hub, and then it can be done, you know, in a no code area. So also there are coding frameworks out there to make it easier. Like there's the whole Rust is the big one, but there's also open APIs where now this whole idea of making them easier for the coder, because during authoring time, you can ask the endpoint, what are the methods I can call now? What are the parameters? You know, what is the HTTP method and things like that? And you're going to see us at SAFE, you know, work to really lower the you know, the cognitive effort to integrate with these. So that would be my answer.
The other thing I would say is it's a bit of a, if you look at the job market aspect, hiring a proficient coder is a challenge,
Yes.
and getting more expensive and competitive with you know, you've got your big tech now going after anybody anywhere that's half decent and offering to double their salaries plus stock options, right? So it's becoming very competitive to try to keep somebody that's a proficient coder.
Mm-hmm.
No code environments allow you to work without having to have somebody that's a coder. And if somebody does leave, it's a lower onboarding exercise for them to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have many stories of customers who have had one coder who was there for many, many years and did amazing things, and then, you know, left either to go to another company or retired, and a lot of, you know, downtime, or it takes a long time for them to figure out, especially years of work. If you're one coder by yourself, that means you probably didn't have code reviews. And then the you know, the documentation and things like that can be quite missing because the person just knew it all. And so so I would say you want to the benefit of no code is if you can do it for the things you can, and our goal at SAFE is to make you so you can do almost it all and as much as possible, will is productivity standpoint is the big win. Yeah.
Okay, so our next question here is, what guidelines or best practices do you follow when determining how to divide workspace/jobs for application integration?
Good. So I can take this one. Basically, if you look at an API, right, you have basically like a get or a read request, or a post or a write request or a put or something like that. So you're either reading or writing from that application. We tend to separate the reads and the writes into separate workspaces. And the workspaces we're also keeping fairly short. So it's just reading or writing from that intermediate data format. And then we use the automation framework to put all of that together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the advantage there is your workspaces, you know, they're basically running in microseconds, right? So they're super fast. It's one little JSON or XML message that's being interpreted and transformed into an intermediate format. And then if you're laying on any business rules and whatnot, you can do it either on the get or the read, or the write out on the other side. So there's a few places that you can sort of interject those business rules and validations. But essentially, one request, one object generally is what we're trying to do. If you're reading or writing a whole bunch of things, your workspace is going to slow down because it's starting to do a lot of work. And the key thing with application integration is just make it fast. If you have a big time lag between reading something, and if you have to post it in another system, and maybe you have to return an ID for the record you created, that time lag could mean that another transaction has come in the middle of that, right? So that time lag of handling those is really important. To minimize that. Any thoughts there, Don?
No, I mean, I agree with everything you say. We're starting to see smaller and smaller workspaces, and then they also enable you better control of if things go wrong, right? Like you might be doing many operations, and maybe one of your data source databases is down. Well, you want to catch that early, or maybe one of the systems you're posting to is down, and so By making them small, you can catch those. And on automations, we have like guaranteed delivery, so it can retry for a period of time. Maybe the target database is just in the middle of a reboot, things happen, or, there are systems go down and up, and the goal of that is to make it so that you can recover and also know where in your pipeline things broke, because then maybe you can just restart from a certain point and not have to rerun the whole thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. The other thing you mentioned there is putting a proper or some error handling into everything there, and a notification framework if something is going wrong. It can be sometimes challenging with getting messages back from a service, for example. So FME, for example, the HTTP caller might say, hey, we processed this transaction correctly because we got a success message. But if you read the results, what it's saying is there was an error posting. We successfully received the error message for posting this transaction, right? So you might have to actually sort of open the mail and read it a little further and make your interpretations and then escalate any of those issues.
Yeah, because that's really the key of making your system robust, isn't it? Making sure you handle all the things that can go wrong. And I remember in university, they always said, code for the error, don't code for success, because if you code for success, then any little thing go wrong, your system's just going to come crashing down. And so that's, again, think of all the things that can go wrong and be able to handle those. And you're not going to get it on the first try. It's just amazing the creative ways that systems that you connect to decide to fail. But yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so we do have just a few questions left this morning. If you still have any questions on your mind, definitely get those in. And I will proceed to the next question here. So how do you handle data schema or APIs change format with upgrades of integrated systems, etc.?
Yeah. So this is the key benefit for using a common message model or a canonical model. So separating sort of the data model that you're using to run all of your integrations from a specific system. So if you have that schema or API change in the specific system, then you have kind of one place that you can update it or correct it. The other thing that we're starting to see more and more, and we just have to be responsive to in the way that we query in the APIs, is metadata-driven APIs. So what this means is you might have, like, here's your standard API, it exposes these kinds of properties, but on the system, a user can go and configure a new property, and that goes into the API. They can say this is a required property, or is required. So you have essentially these new data elements that are coming into the API that are essentially customer defined. And for those platforms that are providing sort of these metadata APIs, there are ways to query the metadata schema in that platform so you can understand what the API is going to be delivering. And there is some stuff you can do and some stuff we can't do right now, Don, in terms of being flexible there.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the areas where, Todd, I always ask Todd, what are some of the things that he would like to see in FME server around automations, next? And guaranteed delivery was something, because Todd has the same book as you saw. And so we have this common, terminology we use, and guaranteed delivery was one of the things that he wanted quite early. And so that's done. I would say the other thing about these API changes is that's kind of the challenge we all live with in this world of, open services that are on the internet. Gone are the days where we control the versions of all the things we're connecting to, and sometimes APIs just disappear. A customer, a service will come up with a new API, and they'll let everybody know the old one's going, but sometimes you forget, and then all of a sudden your job doesn't run, and the API has just disappeared. And so that's, we've had customers with that, and or sometimes the end tool, they just shut down that service. So then you have to find another service. It's not guaranteed that a service you're using today will be there forever. And but it goes back again to making sure the workflows that you build are they flag errors so that when you do try to connect anything, you have to pay attention, as Todd touched on, pay attention to what error is coming back, and so that then you just don't merely continue processing and producing bad data rather than no data. Bad data is worse than no data, so in many cases. So,
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and so our next question, how well does FME integrate with Microsoft SharePoint or OneNote?
Okay.
So we're doing some integration work with MS SharePoint online right now. So the Safe Crew has already sort of built out the ability to read and write to lists in SharePoint and file folder structures. SharePoint also has a fairly well-defined API, so you can use the API functions available in SharePoint to connect with and facilitate the integration. OneNote, we haven't done anything with OneNote. I don't know, Don, do you have any input there?
I would say let us know again what you would like. SharePoint is something that I was just talking with Dale last week. We want to, for the next release, we want to expand our SharePoint capabilities. It is a big system, lots of organizations use it, and so again, let us know what is important to you, and then we can. And I know Todd will, but everybody out there, and then we can work to make it easier and support everything. Yeah.
The just commenting on SharePoint, the key thing that we're finding with SharePoint is there's a formal taxonomy. So that's basically an organization of the metadata around the documents that you're putting into SharePoint, for example, and that is really important to manage and work with to enable enterprise search in SharePoint. Enterprise search works really well in SharePoint if that metadata is well maintained and filled in. If you're pushing stuff in there and you're not completing that, the search capabilities are just not great.
Right. Yeah. And OneNote, never had the question about OneNote before. So at this point, I would say you would be using the APIs on OneNote to do that. Yeah. So again, let us know exactly what you would like to do with OneNote, and yeah, we can look at that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, somebody wants to know the name. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Sorry, I just had another question, but I think you were about to say someone wanted to know the name of that book.
Yeah. So can you hold that book up, Todd?
Sure.
Mine's on the shelf somewhere. Yeah. And it's by Enterprise Integration Patterns. If you Google that, there's even a website, enterpriseintegrations.com, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you go to enterpriseintegrationpatterns.com, they've got basically all your main patterns. The book just goes into more detail on examples and stories about what those are. There's also another, notionally, there's another book coming out from the same group called Conversation Patterns. So on the same website, integrationpatterns.com, they have all those specified. I ordered the book 2 years ago, and Amazon keeps sending me a note. We're so sorry this isn't available yet. So I don't know.
That's funny. Yeah. So
that might be the next conversation when they finally release that, Don.
Yeah.
Okay, we did just have a ton of new questions pour in, so I will just note at this point, if we aren't able to get to your question this morning, we will absolutely be sure to follow up by email. We have time for one or two more questions yet. So the next one is, we can't do any of this stuff without people. So where do you generally get people with FME skill sets from, and what's the best way to formalize / make those skill sets marketable?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we do have the FME community, and that's a great place to meet people with FME skills. We also have an accreditation program, and so we have FME Desktop Professional and then FME Server Professional, and we have a lot of training online. We have an FME Academy where they can learn, and I would say also reach out to info@safe.com if you have a question or ways to help people up. We take the training of FME very seriously. So if you go to FME Academy, you'll find it there. And And there's also an FME accelerator, which is sort of get started in an hour and a half. And but you do need technical people for sure. And in today's market, it's can be tough. One place where we've had great success is the universities turn out amazingly smart young people who, you know, they learn fast and are highly motivated. And our support team has a lot of folks who have come from, you know, either the local universities or institutes of technology, and they pick up FME because it is no code very, very quickly. So do you do training as well, Todd?
Yeah, so I guess we do your training.
Yeah, perfect.
So we do like the FME certificate, FME server certifications is the main one that we focus on. When we're looking for people for what we call integration specialists, we actually are looking for people with a technical background, either with integration technologies or really it needs to be people that understand data, right? That have worked with data and that understand the various types of data that you want to work with. That's the key requirement. Once people understand the data, layering on a tool like FME is fairly straightforward. The one other area when we get into application integration, and like I said, looking at people that have kind of worked in that space before, understanding the API environment. What is an API? How do you query? How do you authenticate? Having had some experience with how to work with APIs is really useful and powerful. We've done some false hires where we've had people that have never worked with APIs and kind of have really struggle with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think with that, we will head into some wrap up this morning. So first of all, claim your community badge as a thank you for joining us this morning. We would like to offer you all a community badge. So today's code is FSAML, and I'll drop that in the chat shortly as well, in case you missed this slide.
Yeah. Do we get one of those too, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I don't know if we've come across that yet. I don't think so. Okay, and so our peak of data integration. So we're all eagerly anticipating this this upcoming August. Apply to present. We still have that open to February 8th actually for both the World Tour and UC. So
Yeah.
definitely apply if you have any ideas.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure, oh, sorry, I'm just going to jump in here. Yeah, so this is really exciting. We get, we're expecting about 1,000 folks, and we get people who are just interested in data integration. So of course, the tagline is the FMEUC, but you know, we've always had people who came who didn't know about FME, and so now we said, let's this, again, our marketing direction really says, let's make this the peak of data integration, because we just talk about data integration. So Todd, I'm sure, will be there, and some from his team, and we're crossing our fingers where we are. And so I expect the apply to present, you know, and so you know, you may not be able to commit to coming, and so I expect the call for papers will be extended even later, because I've talked with a lot of people who want to come, but their organizations right now are not willing to send anybody anywhere, and so we're really optimistic about August. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, and our FME World Tour. So March 22nd to June 24th, there's 45 different events plus. And I know we have our 2-day virtual event as well, right, Don? So that's really exciting.
Yeah. We decided we were going to travel all over North America, but we decided we're just going to do it virtually in early April. So again, yeah. So yeah.
Excellent. And we have a ton of amazing webinars and resources, safe.com/webinars. Definitely check out any other upcoming webinars that might pique your interest. Lots of great resources there. And some resources here that I know Todd and Rob, you dropped in here that could help the audience this morning. So we'll be sure to share out these slides after the webinar as well, and send out all these resources for everyone.
Yeah, perfect.
And thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today. We have that email once again, rob.hewitt@spatialdna.com or info@safe. Definitely reach out to us with any further questions. And if we weren't able to get to your question today, we will be sure to follow up as well.
Yeah. And yeah, so thanks everybody. Thanks Todd and Rob. It's always a pleasure. And I hope next time we meet, it's in person. So
yeah, we can do the coders over coffee thing again.
exactly. That would be great. Yeah. And thank you, Elizabeth, for pulling all this together and being a great host.
Thanks so much. It was really fun to join you guys.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye for now.